My journey started 8 years ago, actually, in the year 2002. I lived in Ahmedabad then, and the Godhra event had just happened, and riots were sweeping across Gujarat. There was a kind of anti-Muslim frenzy gripping everybody around me, and just down my road, people were making a carnival of raiding an ice cream parlor. It was owned by a Muslim. I felt repelled and angry. And in that moment, I think the voice of a poet seemed to shout out how I was feeling, echoing across 6 centuries. He said, "Sadho dekho jag borana." Look, seekers, this world has gone mad. We were like cartoons in a cartoon graveyard. It felt like that. Everybody was pointing fingers at each other. Hindus at the Muslims, Muslims at the Hindus, secularists at the communalists, communalists at the pseudo-secularists, and so on and so forth. I sensed we were locked in a kind of dance of endlessly spiraling dualities, and I wanted to break free of that. And again, it was Kabir who whispered a clue. बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा ना मिलिया कोई, जो तन खोजा आपना, मुझसे बुरा ना कोई. I set out to find evil, and I found no evil one. When I looked within my own self, I found no one as evil as I. So as they say in the Kabir oral traditions, ulat samana aap mein. I turned upon myself and I caught a glimpse of the real enemy, the enemy within. That paranoid ego that needs to create constantly external enemies in order to feel secure about itself. And that angry, accusing finger faltered, and I was plunged into uncertainty. And over the 6 years that followed, I set out on these journeys in search of Kabir across many lands, musical, geographical, religious, cultural, in search of meeting with people who love Kabir, who quote him, revere him, deify him even. And what came out of those journeys were films, CDs, books. But as I journeyed into these outer worlds, I also journeyed within. And Kabir had some surprises in store for me. I thought I would be preaching Kabir to those violent and misguided ones out there. But Kabir started speaking to me in here. He started showing me the fissures in my own mind, the violence and dishonesties I'm capable of in constructing and defending my ego. This is not what I was expecting to find myself complicit in the social scenario I had set out to condemn. Kabir says, "Kabira khada bazaar mein liye lukathi haath, jo ghar jare aapna, chale hamare saath." Kabir stands in the market, flaming torch in hand. "Burn down your home, then come, walk with me." Kabir is asking us all to burn down those walls, those houses, those diwars of identity that we keep constructing to separate us from them. He pushes us out of these comfort zones, our carefully constructed identities, self-images, cherished beliefs, frameworks, which, quite like our houses, are very located, very fragile, very arbitrary. I try to intuit the freedom that may come from such a homelessness. Haath mein tumba, bagal mein sota, charon disha jagiri mein, he says. A bowl and walking stick is all I own, and yet my kingdom stretches in 4 directions. I try to intuit how the sense of self may expand if I disengage from all the labels I have been assiduously accumulating through my life to define myself. Sab hi thor jamaat hamari, sab hi thor par mela. In all places, my community. In all places, I meet with them. Hum sab mai, sab hum mai. Hum hai bahuri akela. I am in all are in me. I am alone and together. Evidently, this is not an easy identity to cultivate. one that's beyond definitions of any kind. And it's not surprising then that Kabir has left behind for himself an identity that's impossible to define, impossible to pin down or label. Kabir is claimed by upper caste Hindus who see the Upanishads and the Vedanta echo in him. Kabir is very dear to the lower caste, so-called lower caste Dalits, who gain dignity and selfhood in his voice. Kabir is in intimate dialogue not just with Hindus and Dalits, but with the Sikh community, with Sufis, with Buddhists. Kabir is a secular icon for many an atheist activist. They make slogans out of his couplets. But Kabir is also very dear to the devout Kabirpanthis, who deify him with temples and artis. So how do we make sense of Kabir? Or perhaps the hidden question in all of this is, how do we make sense of ourselves? Another Sufi poet whispers a clue. Bulla ki jana main kaun? Bulle Shah says almost triumphantly, I don't know who I am. In a human society that's erupting with such confident assertions of identity, garv se kaho hum ye hain, wo hain, I'm proud to be this, I'm proud to be that. This is a very profound kind of not knowing. It's possibly the only thing that could lead us to compassion, to the beginning of love. This kind of not knowing. Because you see, we cling to labels. The Sufi sees the shunyata that lurks under the surface of those forms. We cling to these forms. But the Sufi, we cling to these names, labels, ideologies, institutions, people. But the Sufi confronts the dissolution that lurks under the surface of all of these things. Just one breath away. Kabir says, Pal mein pralay hoegi, bahuri ki karoge kab. In a moment, apocalypse, heads whirl. Afraid of the future, they howl at the past. Death is no stranger for Kabir and many other Sufi poets. In fact, death is the beloved. Will you follow me to the gallows, my friend? Says Shah Abdul Latif Bhetai, a Sindhi Sufi. The gallows await those who seek the beloved. And this is not some abstract, distant, longed-for union with the beloved in the afterlife, in some moment of physical death. This is a courtship that happens in the here and now, in the moment-to-moment awareness of the transience of all things we are attached to, in the moment-to-moment dying of everything. It's really interesting, in urban India, you're likely to come across a Kabir death song at a funeral ceremony. Kisi ki barsi hui to ud jayega hans akela. Some Kabir death song will be playing there. And everybody will be listening and singing with very solemn faces, long faces, very sober. I remember my shock when I first heard a death song in a village in Malwa. The contrast was shocking. Because the moment the song started, everybody erupted into joyous dancing. And I thought, hey, wait a minute, they're singing about death. And it was a moment of epiphany. The encounter of death, or the song of death as a carnival. And I thought, yes, if one takes death as a lover, it holds a big promise. Maybe, just maybe, my fears will give way to a kind of fearlessness. Maybe that was the spirit with which Kumar Gandharv, that great singer of Kabir, once said, Gaate gaate main roz marta hoon. I die every day singing. So what does one do with this wisdom of dissolving selves and boundaries? Should we put it in a scripture, a holy scripture? That's another kind of boundary. The true vehicle for this wisdom, I believe, is a song, which is as free as the wisdom it offers, which flies like a bird without visas across lands and people, beyond the claims of godmen and religions, beyond the claims of state control and censorship, beyond the claims of corporate control and ownership, beyond even the claims of IPR and authorship. So don't ask me for the authentic Kabir. Don't show me with a trace of pride his Bani, recorded for all time to come in a holy scripture, fixed and frozen. I'll show you 1,000 poems of Kabir, flowing like songs, coursing like a river across lands from Nepal to Bengal, from Banaras to Pakistan, changing languages and metaphors, moving with the times, songs entering our bodies and hearts, afflicting them like a virus might, striking them down with Shabd ki chot, the wound of the word. This is how we all become carriers of the truth. We become its vehicles, we become contagious, and then we pass on the affliction. Kaise? Sunne aur sunane se, or better still, gaane se. I suppose this is what scholars call the oral traditions, and this is how we all participate in them. The nurturing ground for this song of wisdom has always been the satsang, the gathering in which you are in the company of the truth. Sat ki sangat karna. In 15th century India, it was an immensely subversive and radical act, the satsang. It was a space, it was a gathering where anybody could come, regardless of caste, class, gender, to sing, to reflect on the truth, to commune with the divine. This was deeply threatening to God's middlemen and the salvation machines. Isn't it ironic that today, especially in middle class India, satsang has come to denote possibly the most tame space ever? A kind of withdrawal from social engagement, a kind of post-retirement option plan for uncles and grandmothers. So can we reclaim the satsang as a space of radical reflection and action? A space that's not enclosed within walls of divisive sects and religions and cults, but an open space. A be-daro diwar ka ghar, a house with no walls and no gateways. A space which welcomes links with other traditions, other voices, without feeling threatened itself. Not a space where one speaks and many listen, but a space where everybody feels empowered to speak and many listen. So this satsang, when it's organized in this spirit, I believe has the power to be a kind of social organizing around the force of love, along with the rigor of interrogation of the world, which can be authentic only if it stems from an interrogation of the self. And this really has become, unwittingly, without really our planning for it, the work of the Kabir Project in its second phase, which is in a sense ever-growing, expanding, contemporary satsang of a sort, festivals, events, workshops, discussions, screenings, in urban spaces, rural spaces, a place where people from very different spaces and walks are coming together in the same space, old people, young people, rural people, urban people, folk singers, classical singers, believers, non-believers, all drawn by the voice of this poet, by the twin imperatives of interrogation and love. And this satsang is growing into schools and colleges, offline and online as well. So I'd like to share with you one moment from the Bangalore Festival of Kabir, which we organized last year in February, March, in which I felt this kind of power of the satsang was sort of realized in its best spirit. The context was the growing jingoism in our country 4 months after the Mumbai terror attacks. Our team had, despite a lot of pessimism and no help from anyone, we had actually managed to secure visas for our Pakistani singer friends from across the border to come here for this festival and join other Kabir singers from Malwa, Rajasthan, Karnataka. And I think we did this. We managed to get the visas because it was a sheer will and commitment to recall the voice of Kabir as a shared cultural heritage across the borders precisely at that moment in history. It was the last day of the concert, and Fariduddin Ayaz was performing his Qawwali. It was the culminating concert of the program. Farid Ayaz is a man from Delhi, flung across the border in partition. He often says about himself, wryly, that Karachi mein we are called Dilli wale. And when I come to perform in Delhi, I'm called Karachi Wale. And in the middle of his program, he burst into a Rajasthani folk song, Padharo Mhare Des, come to my country. And the moment was so charged, it crackled with a kind of tragic beauty. He said, come to that undivided land, beyond India and Pakistan. Let's go to that undivided mind space, where Kabir is calling us, where we all belong. And there were many people weeping in the audience at that time. I'm not surprised to hear that one of the root meanings of the word bhakti is participation. I'm not surprised that on these journeys, I found myself wanting to drop the camera, which was reducing me to being a passive observer, and to pick up the manjiras and to pick up the tambura and join in the singing. The spirit of joining in is the greatest power of the folk tradition. And it is this democratic, inclusive spirit which is also the power of the bhakti tradition. And when the two come together in a typical all-night village satsang, which is my greatest inspiration, which has held most of my lessons, when these two come together, many boundaries begin to blur between singer and listener, between singer and song, between self and other, between self and God. Kabir says, Lali mere lal ki jit dekhun tit lal. Lali dekhan main bhi ho gayi lal. The redness of my beloved is such that wherever I look, I see red. I set out in search of red, I became red myself. So when the act of singing, listening, sharing leads to such a loss of boundaries, I believe that the wisdom of the poem is being enacted, practiced, embodied, and realized. It's a kind of poetic praxis. When this spirit of the satsang begins to flow outward into the more ordinary spaces of our lives, it holds the potential to transform our inner and our outer worlds. The power of the satsang derives not just from singing, but also the listening. Isn't that what Kabir keeps telling us? Suno bhai sadho. He keeps urging us, listen. It's almost as though he intuits that these two eyes might get deluded by form, deluded into a sense of separateness. It's almost like he intuits that a larger, more connected truth can be apprehended through the faculty of listening. And I think I came to the truth of listening through a very different route, through my craft as a filmmaker. I remember when I sat down to edit these films, I had probably gathered 400 hours of video footage by then. Amazing, beautiful, rich encounters. And I was totally daunted, actually very often totally paralyzed. Because the footage resisted fitting into the forms I wanted to give it. And my anxiety grew. And the anxiety was born in that artistic ego that wanted to exert her will and authority on this footage that was defying the forms I wanted to give it. And at some point I just said, nahi hoga. I just felt incredibly humbled by the task. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to make these into masterpieces. And I think it is in that moment when my ego was completely defeated that I began to listen. Listen to what the footage was saying to me, not what I wanted to say through the footage. And then everything began to fall into place, quite simply. I think what I realized in that moment was that in some sense these were not my films. They were not something I made or earned or chose. They were experiences that I had the good fortune to receive as gifts from a space that lay beyond the claims of my small self. There is an old folk belief in South America that says that the power of a gift stays if the gift stays in circulation. If the gift is hoarded, then it causes bad luck. And I realized that these experiences, these songs, these poems were gifts of wisdom. And really, all I had to do was to pass them on and gift them to others. Kabir says, Mera mujh mein kuch nahi, jo kuch hai so tera. तेरा तुझको सौंप दूं, क्या लागे है मेरा? There is nothing in me that's mine. All that is yours. I offer to you what's already yours. What can I say is mine? So here's my parting gift to you, a song. The song, could we have the mic for a bit more? The song I've chosen to share with you to end this, even though I'm blowing the time limit, I know, best expresses the spirit of everything I've just said. Because it is a song that I heard as a Marwari folk song in Rajasthan with the signature of Kabir. And later I realized that it's actually a parable from Buddhist, sorry, did I say actually? No, it's also a parable from Buddhist traditions. And later I realized again that it's also a native Indian American folk story. So I think it just beautifully expresses the power of these oral traditions and how things that inspire us, quite like TED, keep spreading. Could we have these mics on, please? Yeah. The story of the song is that of a brave little parrot who lived in a forest that caught fire. And all the birds and the animals of this forest were fleeing. And this brave little parrot decided not to flee. And she came and sat on the tree, and the story tells the conversation between the bird and the tree, and the tree says, Tam udi pare ko jao, you have wings. So she turns around to the tree and says, Phal khada pan birodia, ramya dalo dal, tam jalo main ubru, jivno kitrik bar. So she says, I ate your fruit, I soiled your leaves, I played from branch to branch. You burn and I fly away. You live in love but once. So what does this brave and foolish, utterly foolishly courageous parrot do? She goes and plunges herself into a lake nearby, comes back over this blazing forest fire and flaps her wings. 2-3 drops of water fall. And then she goes back to the lake, plunges again, comes back over this blazing forest fire, and again flaps her wings. And again 2 drops of water fall. And she keeps doing this. And her friends and other animals and birds who are fleeing start scoffing at her and laughing at her and saying, what do you think you're doing? And she turns to them and says, I'm trying to do what I can. And just then the gods are passing by in the clouds, the Buddhas. And one of them happens to see this brave parrot and sweeps down into the forest in the form of an eagle to look at this jatan, this lagan of this bird. And he is incredibly moved. And he begins to cry. And when the gods weep, what happens? It rains. And in this version of the song, it says, Dudhe butha mein, the clouds burst with milk. Kahe Kabir Dharam Das se, nit nit navlo ne, every day my love is new. So the main refrain of the song is, Kirn sankarasne, Mhari heli, oh my dear friend, my saheli, whom should I love? So here's a song about love, about commitment, about passion, about courage, about being in the here and now and responding to what you know needs to be done, irrespective of 5-year plans that will tell you it can't be done. This is about quenching the fires raging around us and quenching the fires raging within us. Since I've really blown the limit, I'll sing half the song. दीवाना की तरह कादा हेलिए बाबा बुझो रे